Hello, everybody. Welcome to PortMedia's Open Studios, airing on our YouTube station. Just go to www.ncmhub.org, click on the YouTube icon, and then look for the playlist for Open Studios. I'm your host, Mary Jacobson, and today I'm delighted to welcome one of my favorite guests, Suzanne Dubus, Executive Director of the Jeanne Geiger Crisis Center, who's here to talk to us about their annual walk about domestic violence, which will be happening in a very creative virtual manner this year. So welcome, Suzanne. How are you faring?
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. You know, all things considered, I am doing well.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we've been fortunate in our states to have to be doing very well. We're in I think they call it the green zone.
Yes,
So
we are in the green zone, so that's a good thing.
yes. Well, Suzanne, when you were here last in the spring, which wasn't that long ago, but feels like forever ago, given the strangeness of time during a pandemic, the pandemic was actually relatively new, and we were on shutdown orders at the time. And we talked about the impact that enforced relative confinement was having on increased tension in family relationships and how the Geiger Center was responding to that. And today, of course, we find ourselves in an extended pandemic with an uncertain end, and we all feel frayed around the edges and have, I think they use the phrase pandemic fatigue. So I wanted to begin by asking you if things have gotten even harder for families based on your hotline calls at the Geiger Center and the people that you are serving in the greater Newburyport community.
Yeah, they really have. And so kind of going back to our conversation from the spring, at that time, we were just really trying to figure out how to move everything to virtual and what was happening at the courts. The courts were closing. Did that mean that survivors couldn't get restraining orders? So there was a lot that we were sifting through and trying to figure out. And when the pandemic first hit, things got really quiet for about 4 to 6 weeks. And then slowly but surely, the calls started to tick up. And plus, we got more stable. Like, we now knew how to reach out to our clients and say, this is how we can interact. This is how we can support you. And would say in July, we opened up our Amesbury office for appointment only survivor services. And so we were keeping the building capacity at 25%. But not surprisingly, survivors weren't banging down our doors to get down. They either couldn't come because they had children at home and maybe their abuser was still living there, or it was a bit of a hassle, and it was actually more efficient to work virtually. And so while our Amesbury office has remained open, and one of our Lawrence's office is also open, we have very few people going through. It's mostly staff who are tired of working at home, who need to work together on projects. But what we've noticed in survivors is we are now serving the same number of survivors that we were serving before the pandemic hit, but we're providing about 25% more services. And so what that's telling us is that people are trying to keep things together a little bit longer. So by the time they reach out to us, there are a lot of services that they need. And in many cases, the domestic violence itself is more severe, more physical. They're waiting to go to their doctors, or they couldn't go to their doctors. So there's a lot of health issues as well. And then the economic pressures that I think many, many families are feeling truly scare survivors in a different way, because it feels like I can't do this on my own and I do need help. And so often we know that financial fears and financial pressures really force survivors to stay with their abusers. So that's what we're beginning to see.
Yeah. So in other words, it's things really are amplified, and in some ways the same but more intense and with different kind of wrinkles, especially financial ones added to complicate the picture, as well as health issues. I wonder, because I think they're often a population that people don't think of when they think about domestic violence. Suzanne, could you talk a little bit then about how children and teenagers have an amplified impact?
Well, I think, yes, I'm happy to. So it's interesting in our own children's program, that was one of our last programs that we were able to bring remotely because we normally see between 300 and 400 young people
Mm.
who are either victims of domestic violence or who have been watching for years the domestic violence between their parents. And but they're the youngest people. They're like, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 year old. You're not going to engage them on Zoom. And so it took us a while to figure out how to do this well and in a way that respects a child. So what we've been doing is actually working with moms and trying to
Mm.
support them in their parenting of kids who are really still suffering from trauma from the home life, and then this greater trauma of the pandemic, of isolating from their friends. That's a really big piece for young people, is their social identity. And so many kids will come together because they share some kind of a history of trauma in their families, and they can be together and it can be normal. They can just
Yeah.
play and be kids. And so without that, it's really tough. And I've been reading a lot of the research, a lot of the fear that school psychologists and mental health professionals are coming out with, and pediatricians about. They worry about the long-term mental health consequences of this kind of forced isolation and this tamping down of childhood during really critical years. And so when that is amplified by domestic violence and trauma, it's very worrisome. And so, I, of all the programs, I look forward to that one getting, back to normal. And who knows when that is or how that is,
Yeah.
but I worry about them the most.
Yeah, and of course that will be a top priority, and I'm so glad to hear that you found a way to work with the parents to try and help them strategically respond to the amplified needs that the children have, which makes supporting your organization all the more important for all of us. And so let's talk about, the annual fundraising walk. It's a traditional event
It
in
is a
Greater
traditional.
Newburyport.
It's our 29th.
Yes, well, congrats. That's really wonderful.
Thank you.
And I know it's important to the community. And with your expanded calls for service, I'm sure it's only more important to raise the funds that you need. But of course, it can't be done in the usual way this year. So tell us about the creative way that you found to offer a pandemic version of the annual fundraising walk.
Well, thank you. So October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and so as you know, because you live in Newburyport and you know about the walk, it really is an important way to show up and honor survivors, to raise awareness in the community that there are a lot of people in the community that care about this issue and understand that it is an issue. And when I say community, I'm really using the large C. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
the 16 communities that we serve. So the theme this year is Rock the Walk, and so we're asking people. There's going to be a virtual walk kickoff on Sunday, October 4th, from 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And this year we have Maria Stefanos from WCVB Channel 5 News, who will be, kicking off our walk. We're going to hear from some other lovely folks that morning. And then we're asking people to either walk the route in Newburyport, it's 3.2 miles, or there's one in Amesbury that we have designated as a walk, or ask people to walk your own route, that's something that's meaningful to you. And but I will tell you, in Newburyport and Amesbury, there are kindness rocks. And so we have over 400 kindness rocks that will be hidden along the trail that people can find. So it's going to be a wonderful thing. And we're asking people to take a picture of themselves or their teams walking and tag us. And the hashtag is Rock the Walk.
Well, first of all, Kindness Rocks is a wonderful idea. And, why
Yeah.
don't we have Kindness Rocks everywhere? We
we
could
maybe
certainly
we'll
use them.
maybe we'll start something, Mary.
Maybe we will. Absolutely. Kindness trees, kindness benches.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in general, the whole, not just our community, the whole world could use a heavy dose of kindness these days. So I think
Yes.
that's just brilliant. And I take it that your volunteers have been decorating the rocks with messages
Volun
and,
Yes, and our Girls Inc. program, they've
oh,
been decorating rocks. I know that I've gotten some really wonderful photos from folks in group homes and young families decorating rocks, and so it's been really fun. Every time I go to the Newburyport office, there's a bag of rocks on sitting on my stairs that you got to lug in. But it's really been wonderful, and I think people like. You know what? You said we need kindness everywhere. I think that might be a little bit behind people's willingness to come and take
yeah.
10 and 20 rocks and decorate them.
Right. And, people also, I mean, there's been increased isolation, and I mean, Zoom is wonderful, but it's not the same as
No.
being with people in person. So I'm sure that feeling like part of something is also very gratifying for people, and that's been harder to do. So paint a rock
Yes.
and
And,
know that it's supporting something really important and beneficial.
and think
So
kind
and
thoughts.
think kind thoughts. That's right. You also mentioned the hashtag, and so it sounds as though people can take pictures of themselves on the walk and then post it, and that I think is brilliant too, because part of what people ordinarily would enjoy and benefit from participating in a walk like this is being with other like-minded people and feeling a sense of sharing that fundraising experience, and so that enables people then to create a virtual expanded community. I'm doing this because of the selfies.
Yes. I know what you're doing.
It's the selfie maneuver. And so there is a hashtag, isn't there?
Yeah, hashtag rock the walk.
Walk. Well, there you go. All right.
Walk the
So
walk. And the other thing that I failed to mention is so normally the walk is held on one day. It's a
yeah.
succinct kind of 3 hour period. Well, this year, because we live in the times we live in, it's going to be a 2 week walk. So
Yeah.
you can do the walk and hashtag rock the walk and post the photos anytime from October 4th through the 18th.
Right.
And so that's when we're still going to be raising funds. And our goal
Yeah.
for the walk is 84,000, and
Great.
we got a long ways to go to reach that
Mm-hmm.
goal.
Right. So with that amount of time, people can do it twice.
They could do it every day.
So there are certain benefits to having an expanded window of time.
Right.
Well, it sounds very creative, and it sounds like it'll be fun and a bonding experience and very fulfilling for people to participate in, which are all really good things. And the other good thing that I was hoping you could remind us of is, what are the services that $84,000 that you hope to raise, and we hope you go more than that.
Mhm.
Tell us about the services that people will be supporting with the funds that are raised by the walk.
Truly, the money that's raised for the walk is really for survivor services and some prevention services as well. But this year, the school-based programs are shifting, so we're not quite sure exactly how and what we're going to be able to pull off there. But the survivor services are everything from our 24-hour crisis hotline to support groups to art therapy to legal representation and help. It is our did I already say support groups? And our transitional and emergency housing programs. And so those are the kinds of free services that are offered to over 1,000 adult survivors. And every year we serve about 300 to 400 child survivors. And so it's essential that free services are available, because we can never let that be an obstacle for survivors to leave and live independent and safe and healthy lives.
Yeah, and I just wanted to underline that your services are free to the
Yeah.
people you serve. Not sure that everybody realizes that, but it's not inexpensive to provide the kind of services that you provide, but it can be life-saving for people, and so vital then to be able to provide those free services, especially during these times when finances are really hard for people. So
Yes.
there's a lot of really critical kinds of often life-saving services that people will be supporting by participating in the walk and helping you raise funds. Also good to make sure that people understand that your confidential hotline is available 24/7.
Yes, 24/7, and it is answered there. The hotline is always answered by a very well-trained volunteer or a staff
Yeah.
person. And so we're always accessible and open for business.
Yeah. Well, and you can't repeat the hotline number too often, Suzanne, so let's
Got
go
it.
ahead and say
Our hotline
it.
number is 978-388-1888.
Excellent. Open all the time. Well, Suzanne, in closing today, I so appreciate your coming on Open Studios to talk about what's happening with domestic violence during the pandemic, and also to tell us about the creative work you've done on developing a virtual version of the fundraising walk. But I also wanted to ask you, I know that there's been greater demands on your time and energy, and of course on your staff's time and energy. How are you finding respite and taking care of yourself, and how is your staff doing that? Because that seems like it's also an important thing to underline for people. You can never forget to take care of yourself these times.
That, you know what, that is an excellent question. And it's one that every week. So what I do is I walk 4 miles a day every morning with my husband. And it's just kind of a way to move my body and to get centered and grounded. I try to stay off Zoom more than 5 hours a day, just because
Yeah.
I find the Zoom experience, while it's important because it does let us connect, it's exhausting
Yeah.
in a different way.
Yeah.
And you somehow lack that energy building when you're with people and in person. And I try really hard to have one day on the weekend where there's just no work.
Oh.
And but I underline try. Um, our agency works really, really hard with staff to make sure that they're okay,
Yeah.
because I'm not hearing as many of the tales that our direct service staff hears, or our lawyer or advocates. And it is a hard thing
Yeah.
to be suffering from these same kinds of economic woes, fear of the pandemic, an eagerness to get back to normalcy. A lot of our staff have young children and are trying to figure out, how do I show up for this client when I've also got a 4-year-old that's asking for mac and cheese. And so we're really working with our staff on making sure they have flexible schedules and realistic work expectations. And this is not the time to be a superhero. Just show up, be present, take care of yourself, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you
Yeah.
really can't help that person on the other end of the phone.
Yeah. It's like I've saw the expressions psychological first aid in an article I was reading in the Washington Post this morning. So it's all psychological first aid, and it's so important because you need to provide that aid to yourself before you really can have the time and the energy and the focus
Yes.
to be able to really support the people who are often very badly in need of that kind of support. So I'm really glad that 4-mile walk sounds very impressive. By the way, good for you.
Thank you. This was my September challenge to myself, was to walk 300,000 steps in the month
Oh,
of September. So I'm almost there.
oh, good for you. That's wonderful, Suzanne. Suzanne, thank you so much for taking the time to visit Open Studios this morning and to tell us about what's going on with the Geiger Center and to talk about the annual fundraising walk. One more time for the hotline number and where people can get information about the fundraising walk in case they want to sign up.
Sure. The hotline number, 978-388-1888. And if you're interested in signing up for the walk, go to our website at jeannegeiger.org. That's JeanneGeiger.org. And the walk is splashed all over there. And you can form a team or join a team. I'm about to post something on Facebook today to ask people to support me in the walk. So you can also follow me on Facebook.
Wonderful, Suzanne. Thank you so much for visiting the show and also just in general for the work that you and your staff do in helping us create a safer, more just, kinder community. Thank you. All right,
Thank you,
everybody,
Mary.
that's it for Open Studios this morning. Farewell now. Bye-bye.